Yeah, I just want to ask about frame of references and sense of place. I mean, we are on the south side of Chicago. We are in Woodlawn, and the spirits of the ancestors of this music are rich and they're alive. Is there anything that a sense of place, that, especially for the Parisians, that being in Chicago, where a lot of this art ensemble, the AACM, the blues, even just Ahmad Jamal, just the spirit of the place, is there any sense of that that place when you're performing that you experience?
Tu veux répondre à cette question? C'est moi qui réponds à cette question.
Dans le micro.
Okay. Wow, now I feel important. You all have to listen to me. I can't hear you. Yeah, no, Chicago's really important to me, actually, the spirit of Chicago. I've been studying this for a long time, and I'm lucky enough to actually live in France, in Marseille, in the same town as Famoudou Don Moye. And so I got a lot through him, and he, of course, for me, carries the spirit of Chicago. So coming here, for me, was like a sort of a new homecoming, sort of. But yeah, I'm enjoying the vibes here.
Another question related to the children. I was thinking about when we have multi-instrumentalists, but you are really multi-instrumentalists. I mean, there's quite a battery here, which was wonderful. What do you learn playing an instrument that's not really your native tongue? And there are times when I was like, oh, are you the synth player? I'm like, wait a minute, and like this beautiful flute, or I'm like, oh, the bassoon, it's just going to be for effects, but you're a wonderful bassoon. Like, what do you learn, or the trombone, which is unexpected when you're playing the piano. How is your non-native instrument, in this sense, as an improviser, a different set of resources?
Yeah, you know, it's just covering the whole spectrum of possibilities with the sound that we're making. You know, we're here, so I was able to bring a lot of things. But you know, when we go to France, it might just be saxophone and flute and one other thing, you know. So when there aren't any limitations, it's great to explore the whole spectrum, the full spectrum of sound, from low end to high end. You know, and these instruments they come across the path. I wasn't looking for a bassoon. A friend saw a bassoon in a thrift store, and it was $100, so I got a bassoon. And it's great, you know. But I think there are also different ways to tell a story or to say a thing. There are different ways to. They're almost like languages or regions of a country, you know. And they're also like different animals in the forest, you know. When you need some birds, you pick up the flute.
Yeah, as a listener, there were times when I didn't know where the sound source was coming from. For instance, the kalimba or the
Imbira.
The imbira, yeah. You know, just for instance, you know, not seeing it first, or times not telling if it was the bass or the synthesizer. As improvisers, do you know where the sound source is coming from? Are there times when you're experiencing this uncanny where you're not aware?
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it happens. Sometimes I don't know who is doing what, and I love this. It's like a big mix of everything, and it's like you lose the control because you're not sure, is it you, is it the other, and yeah, I think it's really nice feeling.
And you know, this music is like a metaphor for life, and you know, sometimes you don't like surprises in your life, but up here with the sound, the surprises are welcome, you know.
Yeah, one other thing I noticed, a lot of improvised groups. You were playing around the pulse at the beginning, that sort of rolling feeling that you would, sort of Roscoe Mitchell roll. It's very beautiful. And then this sort of 12/8 division pulse, the compound pulse. As a group, did you have to negotiate your attitude toward pulse? I mean, 'cause some groups, it's almost like groove is not forbidden, but it's to be played around and not played in. How did you as a group, as you've learned each other, negotiate that?
It was. It was super complicated in that I just did it. But I'm looking at people. So if somebody would start like getting the gas face, I'd probably just drop it or something, But I think this group, or me, I love the pulse, So I'll just bring it in, drop it, go back to no pulse. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think this music is like it's like the best possibility of democracy, like everybody speaking and listening at the same time. And so, there's not a lot of talking about what we're gonna do because we trust that we believe in this democratic process of lending ideas, dealing with those ideas, adding new ideas. Yeah.
Okay, I've got one more question, and then we're going to turn it to the floor. And I hope, again, he's asleep, I think. He's not going to ask any questions. Dana's got a microphone, and just for accessibility and posterity, we're the University of Chicago, so this will live on forever. It'll be some microfilm. We'll put in a time capsule somewhere, and they'll dig it up in 1,000 years. So my last question is, do you have a name as a group? Actually, it's a two-part question. I read that you were dealing with some written sketches that came in, and that you had a band named Crying Out Loud. So first of all, what was the nature of working from written sketches? And second question can be later, but who named the group? Yeah. So.
Well, the name I just I emailed everyone the name, and everyone was like, "Yeah, good name." So that's how the name was done.
That's a good answer.
It's called Crying Out Loud, and I guess we were just all convinced we wanted to cry out loud. And what was the second question?
Oh, the written sketches or written.
Oh yeah. Oh well, it's funny. Who told you that?
The internet.
Oh yeah. The internet lies. That's fake news. I don't even know who ever said that, but I definitely didn't. No, we don't have any written material at all, actually. There will be written material of a sort, though, if you come tomorrow to ESS, where we do a live recording session around archives. I guess archives could be considered like written, yeah. So
There was a reason for that, and we should mention her name now because the band was supposed to be with a trombone player by the name of Christian Bopp. And she unfortunately fell sick months before we left France. So Olivia came in, and now the band has found a great identity as a quintet with Olivia. We still hope that when the band will tour in France, it will become a sextet with Christian Bopp. And that's also why at that time, and I must say that because for people to understand, there was another idea when it was still Christian that you had, to have sketches, short sketches on which improvisation will evolve. Of course, with Olivia coming in, yes, you did write that, and I translated. But anyway, with Olivia involved in the process, then it became something else, of course.
See, I'm glad I asked, because in 1,000 years, if somebody found the website in this video, they could think that this was written music. But now that we covered this here,
at the
we've
same
corrected
time,
the record.
The way language works, we're gonna work it like this. This improvised music is composing in the moment, and we just met each other last Wednesday, May 1st. So in building a relationship, we have navigated how we're going to travel this experience from beginning to end of a set. And it's like how birds fly, you know. They start and they stop, and somehow they figure out how to get there together. And I think it's not on paper, but there's some writing going on, because writing is it's partly in your hand, but it's mostly in your head. And there was something else I was going to say.
Wonderful. Well, we've got a lot of folks, and it's wonderful. I was here in November. The Bridge is always here in November as well.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
There was. I tried to force on everybody this song that we were working on earlier by Sun Ra called "Love in Outer Space," and we dealt with it. So that was a written piece that we worked with today, for sure written.
With the archives that are held at ESS. That's so wonderful. Okay, great, but it's still light out. That's wonderful. So let's capitalize on that daylight energy and get some people involved. Does anyone have any questions for the group? Yes. Dana will come.
So right now I've been seeing this reemergence of live instrumentation in Chicago schools, because for a while it was taken out, but with companies like Creative School Fund and Ingenuity, you're starting to see it come back. And so I'm wondering, in France, is there an opportunity for the youth to get the avant-garde music and be able to stretch out and just, play?
No.
Yeah. Nothing at all? Nothing at all?
Well, let me tell you, Dan. No, it's hard because in France there's this thing where, let's say that it has less of a symbolic impact on culture. It doesn't have that much of a strong history anchored in it's not really. It was like a real musical movement, but then the importance of it has in a lot of places given in to whatever was actually easier to teach. So you have a lot of places where you can access jazz, but there's a strong tendency in schools in France to sort of make a history limit of jazz. From this period to this period is what you study. You're going to study basically from Louis Armstrong to early Eric Dolphy at the best. You're not going to go any further, mostly not in school. So the awareness isn't brought that much, and improvisation is thought of as a lot. We also have free improv, real, with no non-idiomatic, where it's no reference and all that. But that particular sort of improvisation that we're doing, which is really having no boundaries in whatever we mix, there's no real yet institution for that. But maybe it'll come. Hey, who knows?
You all have been talking about, in a broad sense, you've been talking about France.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, where are you all from? Are you from Paris or what? Can you say that?
Yeah. I'm from Marseille. I'm in a little city down the south Mediterranean, on the banks of the Mediterranean. Yeah.
I'm from Paris.
Oh, sorry.
I'm from Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest are from Chicago.
Yeah.
This is for the gentleman in the hat. I had a question about the instrument you were playing. Is that a cello, bow, and a bell that you were playing together?
Yeah, you'd have to ask the cellist if it's a cello bow, but yeah, it's a bow and a bell. It's bow percussion. I mean, I think bass will be hard here.
Yeah, I think so.
It probably came with my cello. And this is a bow I made with nylon string. physics, you know? That bell's from Tibet.
Sorry, I was out a little bit, so maybe if somebody asked this question, I'm sorry. But I'm just wondering if anyone has a broader statement about the relationship with technology. I mean, in some sense, technology expands the possibilities, but yet when you expand the possibilities, you lose some of the immediacy of just hitting a drum. And I think we saw, some examples of technical failure. And was that frustration? Is that, I mean, could somebody just talk about technology?
Yeah, sometimes it fails. And again, it's like not my car breaking down, it's not like the house flooding, it's just the thing not working on stage. And if that's the worst thing that happens today, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's like, I wanted it to work, and it's something that you just deal with. Next time we'll figure it out.
I will say, as a listener, it was actually a wonderful moment, because you're seeing these fingers move on the iwi, and you're thinking the electronic wind instrument, and you're thinking, you're seeing a gesture and you're not hearing a sound, and so you're expecting this sound, and it's actually quite a wonderful moment. And then you see it, and then eventually it's like, okay, we'll move on to the next thing. But when to Dan's point, it's like we're so used to gesture and sound being linked, in a sense, that seeing that decoupled is, in its own way, beautiful.
Yeah. So. And it's like, if I had a different personality, if Rob was a different person, we might let that technology get in between us, But we won't let that happen, It's just stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah, I just want to say that was the nicest way you could have described what happened. So thanks for that. But part of this group, what's been really fun is just finding the relationships between these different instruments and the stuff that we do by ourselves, and now we're thrown together. We've just been performing in front of people pretty much nonstop. So, but it's fun to try to recombine our stuff and see what happens. And the iwi thing, I'm looking forward to trying again, because we tried it just right before the show and it worked. Yeah, and then I happened to be using the same piece of equipment that was needed for the iwi to work, so it was like, just I guess a miscommunication.
It's a traffic jam.
Yeah. Traffic jam.
Sometimes you don't get there.
Just to follow up on Dan's question a little bit, is there a kind of position in relation to technology? I mean, there's the physics of sound, but there's a lot of acoustics, the bell from Tibet, the piano, the drum, very familiar acoustic sounds, but there's, a certain amount of electronic and, other ways of generating sound.
You should come tomorrow to the ESS concert. There's going to be a lot of electronics.
Yeah, I'm just curious in terms of how do you make those kinds of decisions, and does it really matter, or does somehow it disappear? Like they're just all tools?
I think one of the decision-making factors is just how much room there is in the car, and what we wanted to leave kind of at this other place we were today making sound, and just, drive across the city. So it's more just like, what do I want to carry up 9 flights? And that's how I think about it as well. And in addition to thinking about just these windows and putting sound blanket, making a blanket or something like that. So.
And the bassoon is I call it the woodwind computer, because there's 9 different places you can put your thumb on the back side of it, and you only have 2 thumbs. And the idea of this advancement of the late 19th century and this advancement of the mid 20th century, combining together, has led to people creating communities where they're living symbiotically through music and giving people a purpose in the world. So, it's just like oil paints, yeah, it's and what you can carry, when we fly, like this guy, he's like, he could only bring, what, your trombone? Is that even yours? Yeah, he couldn't bring his accordion, he had to rent one, and he was lucky for that, yeah, so it's just practical choices, and me, it's been what I can afford and what I find, I didn't buy the C melody saxophone or the tenor saxophone. They found themselves in my life. The C melody saxophone used to belong to a Chicago documenter of this music named Malachi Richer, who self-immolated 2006. So, there's the technology tells stories, and we can tell stories with the technology.
Yeah, I have a question about the motor, actually. You just broke the rhythm, you broke the melody, and used the motor. And how did you come up with that? And,
well, I was
were you just in that training or music session, and then you realized there's some construction worker on the streets, or there's this annoying melody, or not annoying melody, but annoying noise around, and you somehow want to make this annoying voice positive and not negative anymore. So you just play around with that and somehow integrate it in the music piece. And I think it was quite hard at the first time, but then somehow you got into the new melody and so on. This was very beautiful, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, and then you got it. It's like when you're living on the first floor and the second floor person moves out and the landlord wants to renovate, there's going to be noise, and you have to deal with it. And luckily, that was not that. And then you create things to then make yourself and the group react differently. It's just putting a challenge out there, an idea for everybody to deal with.
And was it new, actually, this instrument?
Just in the last month or so, but people have done it before, like Michael Zarang. He uses implements that vibrate that, are not a 1950s massager from a thrift store. And it's just another form of vibration. It's motorized vibration, and it was $10. So.
Thank you. Oh, I have a quick question for Simone. So we have many instruments as Americans that we would identify as folk music, a folk instrument like a acoustic guitar or a banjo or a fiddle or blues guitar. What is your relationship to the accordion? And this is just purely from stereotypes of cafe music. But do you have any sort of nationalistic relationship, or did you learn that as a folk instrument or as an improvising resource?
I'm proud to say I have a nationalistic relation with nothing, I hope, in the world. And I wish no one did. But the accordion, I like you see, because I played the organ also at some point. And I really love the organ, but it has this extremely, like it can't bring you back any earlier than 1950, right? Because it has this collective, everyone's conscious that this thing was invented afterwards. And then when I started practicing the accordion, I noticed that some modes that I was using sounded like way rougher. They sounded more like a little wild. And then since I was picking up the accordion, I tried to learn accordion music. So I went into those sort of, well, I just picked up some stuff from the Balkan music. So that's I guess my traditional relation with my accordion comes from like East Romania, more or less.
just wanted to ask about your book, about the AACM, if that book is opening up opportunities for more people to do research in France on this kind of music and what you all are doing, and if it's creating more of a academic kind of inquiry about this music.
I was not expecting the question. Maybe it's too early to say. Anyway, I don't believe in that kind of big change, because there's no way that you can write a book even about such an important organization that has still been underground all these years. If you compare it to the mainstream, so there are institutions like the University of Chicago sometimes now, and others in New York or in Europe that celebrate the AACM. But it's still basically an underground organization if you compare it to so many other things. So I don't see a book or research could be more important than the organization itself, if that makes sense when I say so. Now it will inspire, I hope, and it already did, a lot of research, a lot of insights, but we will still work, all of us, in the different corners of the world where we live in, and try to improve them, of course.
That's great. As a band, you'll be back in Hyde Park Tuesday, is that correct? Is it the Du Sable? Saying the 14th?
Yes, Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah. So just down the park here, and at Promontory as well. No, not Promontory. Just Du Sable. Okay, great. Yeah, and I just have one last question. So there's a lot of gigs up here through the next week. For the Chicagoans, where can we catch you next? Do you have any gigs you want to promote after Bridge? Putting you on the spot. I'm trying to throw you. That's okay. You don't.
I'll be playing at the Promontory maybe June 21st with Ben Lamar Gay and Lisa Harris. She's from Houston. Ben Lamar Gay is son of Chicago. Really coming into his own right now. So yeah, you should keep your ears open for that. It's going to be the end of our Juneteenth tour, because Ben and I have a Juneteenth album coming out. We're in a duo called Freddie Dougie.
All right, well, the sun has completely gone down, so that can be a nice indicator. So let's give another round of applause for Crying Out Loud.